I remember the first time that I saw the new Necro support when they were announced. At the time, I didn't really expect them to have this much potential and splash abilities with other archetypes. Now here I am doing another Nekroz Dracotail video. What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome if you're new here. I'm Don and this will be the follow-up for the Nekroz Dracotail deck that I had done in the previous video. There are a few changes to the deck list that I had posted, so we'll be going over those changes along with a few new combo lines that you can do with the deck. As per usual, let's get into the cards. So if you watched the previous video or even seen the deck list, then you'd pretty much be familiar with this. And my main reason for switching the deck list is mainly one thing, and that's because of the spell count. In Dracotail, regardless of what it's mixed with, having a high spell trap count is not really that good. Even their own spell cards can be risky at times because you'll have times where you open 2 or 3 Rahu, depending on your luck, and you get Ash, and you're pretty much cooked. That's good, however, if you're going into a board and your opponent has a lot of cards that negate activation, or so if they negate the activation of the first Rahu, you can try the second Rahu. But going first, that's not really something you want to see. But you can't cut down on the cards because you really need to set those cards. And if you don't have any cards to set, you can't use none of your monster's fusion effect to set the cards. That is why the traps are really important in the deck, and the new trap is very important. As for this though, the additional spell that I had was the Sinful Spores of the White Forest, and that's mainly because it provides another means to fusion summon. Also, it works as an extender if you have a spellcaster monster on the field, which you're playing a spellcaster deck, that's not hard. And it pretty much bridged you to Guardian Chimera because none of the other cards in your deck can summon Guardian Chimera. I've seen a lot of lists with Guardian Chimera in the extra deck with no cards to summon it. They don't have Poly, they don't have this, they don't have any spell card. And I'm like, Rahu can't summon it, Ketu can't summon it, neither does the 5 mana. So how are they summoning Guardian Chimera? I don't know. Other cards that I pretty much took out is like the Mysterion and obviously the Guardian Chimera because the spell is now gone, so I can't really play the Guardian Chimera. And I thought of cutting the Super Poly from the side deck, or matter of fact the deck entirely, so that's also something else. So this is the updated list that I've been working with for some time now. And as you can see, I removed the 2 Sinful Spoil spell cards to add more monsters. And that pretty much changed our count to 3 Lucius and 1 new monster, which is the Nemesis Corridor, because you have some decks that Eschatos isn't the end all be all to because they're like also hybrid decks, so they aren't monotypes. Going Corridor into Colossus is really detrimental to like majority of the decks in the game because most decks really want to add. They might not add a lot, but they do want to add at least 1 or 2 crucial cards. So this pretty much stopped them from doing all that stuff. I also added like an Artemis to the deck because I realized going into Artemis and then having like any one of my fusions, I can just use 5 mana to bridge those 2 to go into the Magister's fusion a lot easier. Another addition was the Cross Sheep. It's really easy to trigger Cross Sheep in this deck because any 2 monsters being sent to the grave, you can trigger Artalion, and Artalion will just summon into one of Cross Sheep's zone, and you can easily get a Monster Reborn or even a Monster Reborn and a draw 2 discard 2 because you're playing a ritual deck, so you can just easily put one of your ritual monsters in one of the zones that Cross Sheep is pointing to, and you can get something like a draw 2 along with a Monster Reborn. As for the side deck, I removed the Super Poly and I'm working with Ultimate Slayer because most matchups you aren't really using majority of your extra deck. So as I said before, the Protoss is pretty much cooked in some lines, so you just remove that and just add like the 3 players along with any one of the corresponding targets for the Ultimate Slayer. So if you're going up against like Razio or Razio Mitsurugi, you know you can send the Valan, remove one of their XCs, and then pop either the trap or the spell card that they have set before you even start playing. If you're going up against something like the Lunalight, you can send Perfume Dancer. She's going to be unaffected, but you sending the Perfume Dancer, you can use the Perfume Dancer's effect to reduce the Liger Dancer's attack by its defense, and that's pretty much going to turn the Liger Dancer into a 300 attack monster, so that works well. Herald is a no-brainer. You can always change it to 1 Herald, 1 Mulong for like monster bounce, and Ogre I think is really good in the format. Thrust and Grizzled Prison, really good. This can end a lot of turns for like Yomi or even the K9 decks because as long as this card is set and you flip it up, they're pretty much cooked. Especially if you're going up against like Crystron K9, this completely kills the deck because they can't Synchro Summon and they can't XP Summon. And once it gets back to your turn, you're pretty much clearing up for a game. Alright. So these cards are pretty much a few honorable mentions. Like there is a Proxy F Magician line. I figured this out when I was messing around with the Magistus version of the deck, and it's really good. You can try it in this build because if you go like events into Emilia to add the Burnak, you can go Proxy F. Then Burnak will add the Unicorn to then add back the Emilia to the hand. And you can get into a line where you can use the Proxy F with like an Artemis, which would get you into the Zora, and then Zora can equip the Moon, which can then get you to something like a Crowley. And once you add the Crowley, if you have any form of like spellcaster Dracotail in your hand, you can summon the Crowley to fusion summon into this guy right here, which is a form of interruption. But the key part is that it pretty much turns your Crowley into another form of fusion summoning, and it's going to trigger one of your Dracotails. As I said before, I removed the Chorozo. This is also an option you can try if you're going to try the Magistus. You don't have Spenta, but it's still something that you can try. And in the previous video, I made use of the Cataster and the Dragon Queen Digit, so you can always look at these cards. But the list is pretty much the same as before. So let's take a look at one of the combos. Hands like these aren't really unfamiliar because you play 3 of these cards. They're good at times to start with, but most of the times you don't really want to open these per se or really start with these. But this is what you can do if you open these 3 particular cards. And that is pretty much why I said that Secretarian is the glue for most of your combo lines, because it can get you to plays like this. Otherwise, you would just normal summon the Emilia and start your combo, or let's say you just use the spell to add a Lucius to summon and normal and then start your combo. But with a line like this, you get to the events, but you don't really get to a ritual line. And just like that, you manage to build a seals and you replenish the 5 mana in hand, which hasn't been used as a fusion material as yet. And you have a Rahu set. So now you can go Rahu into your Arthalion, which will then add you back any one of your monsters from your grave to your hand. And you'll be sending a Urgala with the Rahu to the grave. So you can then replenish your 5 mana, which in your opponent's turn, you can use the 5 mana to fuse the Arthalion and the Ninaruru to go into your Zora fusion. So that's another form of interruption. So you have a bounce and a fusion from the Mululu that you'll summon from the deck. You also have the 2 trap cards that you'll be setting and a monster negate with the Magistus monster. If you made it this far into the video, you can leave a like, that'll be appreciated. And if you want to see more videos from me, you can check out my channel. And if you want to see more videos from me in the future, you can subscribe to the channel. So remember I had said that there's a Proxy F line that you can do despite not having the Spenta. This is pretty much it, but it does require you to have at least 1 Spellcaster Dracotail card in your hand. Once you summon back the Emilia on the field, you can make the Artemis, and then you can use the Proxy F Magician's effect to pretty much fusion summon using monsters you control. I wish it had the effect to fuse using monsters in your hand and field. That would be really nice, but you have to work with what you have. So we pretty much made the Zora, and the Zora has the effect to either equip a face-up monster on your opponent field, or you can equip an effect monster in your graveyard. Luckily, we have the Artemis, which we had to make in order to summon the Zora, and its effect when it's equipped is to add any Magistus monster. Usually you just add the Spoon or Penta as it's known in the Master Duel, but seeing that we don't have that card, we just immediately add the Crowley, which is fine because in this combo we'll use the Crowley's effect to fuse with the Dracotail Spellcaster in the hand to summon a Magistus fusion, and that will trigger the Dracotail monster in the hand. And with that, what you have is a monster negate by sending either one of your Magistus cards. Most likely you'll send the Artemis, and you can destroy a card on the field after you negate. You have a Snatch Steal that makes you can't activate the monster's effect. So it doesn't really negate it, it just stops you from activating a monster's effect. So if your opponent summons a monster that doesn't have an inherent effect, you can always steal a card preemptively, so they won't be able to activate the card's effect. Please note though, if you send the fusion monster with the Zora to the grave as a material to negate, your opponent gets back the monster. So that's something for you to think about. We also have a Spell Negate, which can shuffle back the Lucas from the grave and nets you a draw, so that's never bad. And if your Zora survives until your turn again, you can always equip Artemis to himself again. And if you play any other Magistus monster, you can always add them with the Artemis. So that'll be your main deck Zora or even the Romilia. So let me know in the comments if there's anything that you aren't clear about. And that's pretty much it for today, guys. And see you guys next time.